Check it out. Friday, October 15th, 2021, StitchCast Studio will open the fall series at 3524 Washington Avenue with the podcast by youth leaders on mental health and healing. The presentation will feature a live performance of spoken word by one of the youth after the podcast recording. Also, audience members may ask questions. Stop and take a trip down on my block where you see hidden potential, young minds sharper than pencil, and ain't afraid to speak their mind if they got something against you. We standing with you, we tackle issues like civic pride. Hate will cease to exist, let's put our differences aside. From my side to your side, from Dutchtown to South Side, from Penrose to North Side, from Benton Park to Old North to West End to West Side. We blessed when we step out, we stand down, rise up, stand together, wise up.
This is StitchCast Studio, produced by St. Louis Story Stitchers in St. Louis, Missouri.
This is season 3 in this 2-part series on mental health. Story Stitchers guests Alexis Evans, licensed professional counselor, and Megan Hill, licensed clinical therapist, will join alongside Story Stitchers youth leaders to discuss this very important topic. Check it out. They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them Story Stitchers. Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers, Story Stitchers.
Hello, everybody. Under the sound of my voice, I want to thank you for tuning in to StitchCast Studio. I'm your host, Branden Lewis, and I am accompanied by a couple members of our StitchCast.
Hey, y'all.
And we are also accompanied by a few counselors who I will let introduce themselves. How you doing, ladies?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. Can you basically, let's just start with y'all telling us a little bit of who you are, how you got into counseling. You know, how did we get here?
That's a good question.
I mean, yeah, it's a loaded question, but I'm excited to answer it.
Well, I'll start off with the introduction. My name is Alexis. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Missouri, and I actually own a private practice. It's called Intentional Living Psychotherapy. And how did I get into counseling? We're going to go back to undergrad. I was in a research statistics class where I learned about disparities that different populations face, and that really geared me towards volunteering. And then one thing led to another. Master's degree, boom, I'm here. Okay, your turn, Megan.
I've never heard nobody describe college like that.
I got a different
master's degree. Ugh. You know what I'm saying? Just in my spare time.
Hey, everybody. My name is Megan Hill. I am a licensed professional counselor. How did I get here? I have my own private practice, Melanated Healing, Counseling and Consulting.
Beautiful.
I guess going back to undergrad, I went to Spelman down in Atlanta, and I started going to therapy there. And it was just like such a beautiful experience to have somebody sit with me and my experiences and be able to process through them. And so I didn't initially want to be a therapist. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher, y'all. I love the babies. Got my master's teaching certification. Yeah, I don't use that. But then I was like, okay, 2016, let's do this. So I went to Webster, got my master's, and now we're here.
Dope. Check that out. You see how like they both just kind of describe college as a breeze. Like I heard you. Maybe y'all feel like maybe I feel like that when I'm done too. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's what it is. We on the wrong side of the graduation.
Absolutely.
That's
2020
what it really is.
Insight is different.
Got you.
Yeah, I'm just starting, so I don't know what's going on yet.
I feel you. Now, I definitely advocate for therapy. And we're going to talk about a little bit about mental health and the consequences of ignoring mental health and things like that, you know. With that being said, can we just get into some of the normal mental disorders that somebody who has this might not even know that they have a mental disorder? Things like I don't know, OCD and PTSD. At least in our community, PTSD is kind of normal. So can we get into a couple of those? What are a few mental disorders that you see pretty common?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think typically, so what I specialize is in anxiety and depression and stress too. And I, like you said, I think that's something that African Americans face more times than not. And sometimes we don't even know. Like, that's just a part of our normal everyday life to be stressed out, to be overwhelmed, to be overworked, and the list goes on. But those are some of the few things that I treat on a daily basis, is that anxiety and depression.
I would say for me, A lot of it is anxiety, depression, stress. I work with a lot of children. I actually am a contracted therapist for a Catholic school here. And majority of the young people that come and see me is stress, it's anxiety, a lot of fears about the future because it's pre-K through 8th grade. And so like that middle school age, that uncertainty. But more so in my private practice, it's a lot of relationships and understanding the work-life balance and how to care for family members when they are aging. And so just navigating those pieces, a lot of trauma, just being able to live your life with your trauma and not have it have a negative impact on you. So that's something that I work with a lot as well.
Got you. Both of you brought up anxiety and depression. So which is a lot of people have both. A lot of people have both. I think I got a little bit of both. So for people that who maybe don't necessarily trust the process of therapy or aren't aware of what resources they could use, whatever the case may be, what are some things that they might be able to do on their own to alleviate their depression and their anxiety?
Something that I think that you can do if you don't go to therapy, meditation, yoga, grounding exercises. And I know that's something that you can learn in therapy, but if you go on YouTube and you like Google grounding exercises, deep breathing, if you're into essential oils like eucalyptus, it really helps to bring you down if you feel like you're in an anxious state or you're feeling really overwhelmed. Like taking it in, not sniffing it, just be clear on that, but just like a few drops and just inhaling it, taking those deep breaths, because deep breathing, it really helps to bring you back down and center you to the present.
Yeah, I think what Megan is talking about is like self-soothing. And a lot of people don't want to go to therapy. So that in itself is something that's geared to the person. So she's talking about yoga and meditation. And some people are like, I don't really do that. And that's fine too. But you have to find what works for you. So I'll just add on to that things like journaling your thoughts, because, you know, a lot of us, again, going back to what we're experiencing on a daily basis, we have a lot of negative thoughts. So being able to recognize our negative thoughts versus, you know, what's actually real and being able to tell ourselves something differently. One thing that I always preach to my clients is like working out, eating healthy, getting enough sleep. Those are just the basic things that people can do to take care of their physical and their mental health.
Wow. And you know what? I agree with that. Ever since I started working out, I feel a difference. Or when I feel, you know, it just helps a lot. You know, I feel more confident now. I just feel better. Like in a lot of different areas of life.
Like definitely for me, one thing I've started practicing is breathing. Like stopping in the middle of my day. Like, girl, you are okay. Like this test, it might have stressed you out, but you finished it. It's gone. Try not to focus on things that already happened. Because I know in the Black community, sometimes it is very taboo to talk about mental health. They just say, oh, pray about it. The Lord got you. And I'm like, well, I don't feel it yet, but I would need him to work a little faster or something. And I recently started going to therapy. I was like, let's try every 2 weeks. That was not a good idea. I'm like, woman, I need you every week. Something is happening every week with me. And I feel like representation, it's like...
Absolutely. So
like, was that big for you? Did it like discourage you sometimes when you didn't see like representation, like Black women specifically? In like the counseling field and therapy field?
Yeah, so I'm thankful that there is quite, well, I won't say quite a few of us, but there's enough. There is growing, but our industry is a woman-led industry. However, our practices or the models are of a Western culture. And so, yes, it can be a little bit discouraging if you go to someone else and they're expecting you to do something else that may be outside of your religious beliefs, your culture. And so when you are able to meet with someone that looks like you and kind of understands your struggle and also give you practical tips, one of the things that we talked about before we started going live was music. And that is also another coping strategy. And so to be able to connect in that way to the music that you like, whether that's like when you're feeling sad and it's like, okay, I need something relatable or something to bring me back up. And so having someone to say like, these are things you like, these are the things you rock with, try that as your coping strategy instead of yoga that may not be your thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, like, it is not everybody's thing, but like you said, to your point about representation, it was really, really important for me. But my therapist was Black, and so that it was just this safety that I felt, like this connection to her that, like, you get me. I don't have to make it up, or I don't have to keep explaining to you. And for my clients, I work in a predominantly white school, and so the Black children, that is why they gravitate to me, because it's just like, mommy, she looks like me. I can talk to her, like, I feel safe with her, and that is something that is so important. Going into this profession, that you can create a safe space for your clients, for them to want to work with you, even when it's difficult, because it is going to be difficult, but it's a beautiful difficult to me.
Yeah, definitely. Like, my counselor from high school, she's like a second mom to me, because she always snatched me up and was like, girl, you need to fix yourself. And I like having that community, knowing that I have, like, Black women. Like, my mom, she's cool, but, like, when I see other Black women, they're like, okay, you want to do what I'm doing, here's the steps you need to take, and here's what you need to do.
Wow. So, what would you guys say to a I don't know, a 16-year-old dealing with people that have depression tend to be pretty pessimistic too. If you know, if it's severe enough, at least the people I know can be. So what do you say to somebody that's you know super pessimistic? They young but feel like things aren't happening fast enough and all of that. You know what I'm saying? I think because of social media, a lot of us have been misled to believe that you got to have everything figured out by the time you're 20 or 22 or whatever the case is, right? And so I hear a lot of, and I'm 22 now, and I hear a lot of people that are 19 saying, oh, it's just not happening, man. I'm just not doing nothing with myself. It's like, yo, you 19. You 19. It takes some time sometimes or whatnot. So what do you say to somebody that's you know, kind of depressed and pessimistic because of the way life is going?
I think what I say to them is focus on where you are right now on your journey, because like you said, social media has made it so that everything is supposed to come so fast and so quick, and that's not how life works. But I think when you can share with them maybe some of your failures or how long it took you to get to where you're trying to be, that helps them to connect to where you are right now. What can you do in this space to get you to that next level? I think, you know, just letting them know that you're not alone in your thought and your feeling about, like, where will I go? How can I get to that next step? And then also just supporting them where they are and letting them know, like, it's okay to feel like it's not moving. Like, life is not moving in the direction you would like it to go. Because I feel like if you can validate that for them, it makes it real for them. And it's like, oh, so, like, I'm not tripping because I just feel like I'm 16 and I can't get this part-time job and I can't get these things. You're not tripping. That's frustrating. It's frustrating. What else can you do? Helping them goal set and figure out what those next steps could look like for them in a realistic way for them.
Yeah. I think the thing that you said at the end that I would totally agree with is sit with them where they are. It's not for us to make them feel any differently about their situation, but to validate how they're feeling. Because if I can sit there and listen to you and say, I understand how you feel, you know, then I can also share with you what Megan said in terms of, like, you're not the only one. If you were able to have a conversation with me or anyone else, they will probably tell you the exact same thing. So being able to validate their experiences and then also letting them know, like, that's normal. You're probably not the only one thinking like that. And, you know, what can they do? Empowering them to figure out what their next steps, even if they're not able to get to 20 steps ahead, like, what can you do in the moment to make yourself feel better?
Do you, nobody's, like, legally defined this or anything like that. So what would we describe things like the isms and the phobias that people have towards other people? What would we describe those things as, if not a mental disorder?
Human. Absolutely. I think all of us are flawed in some type of way. And so, even in my practice, I don't try to put a label on everything that people come in with because, again, we are all human that are experiencing things on a daily basis. And so, whether that's our past trauma or the community trauma that we're still experiencing or generational trauma, it's all valid to a degree. But then how do you, knowing what your trauma is, then move forward in ways, making better decisions knowing that? But it doesn't have to be a label for everything. It's like, that's your experience. Okay. What about your experience do you want to keep? And what about your experience do you want to shed and do better with? And we start there.
I think that was, Alexis said it perfectly. You're human. And I think that labeling it defines it as something specific, and sometimes you can't just because of people's experiences. But I will add, I think fear is a huge component to why there are these isms and these phobias, because you fear what you don't understand, and you can't conceptualize why you should understand it. So
Got you. Those are really good ways of putting it.
So how do you address a person who's like mentally unstable? Like they've announced that, hey, I suffer from PTSD, I'm bipolar schizophrenic and depressed. And you're like, as a friend, I'm like, hey, you need to go to therapy. And they're like, I don't like therapy because, they told all my business, or they prescribed me with all this medicine. Now I'm addicted to it and stuff like that. So how would I address that person? Like, you need help, but they don't want to.
Well, I think that's valid too, because I'm not going to pretend as if there haven't been instances where people have sought help and it did not help. That's an unfortunate experience for that person to have, and I wish that they would maybe take the opportunity to try again, maybe seeking out a better professional, and there's ways that you can find a person that is better suited for you. However, when you are the person that is dealing with them, I think the only thing that you can really do is make sure that your mental health is in check and your coping skills are in check, because we can't change people. And so if they don't want to seek the help, okay. But what do you need to do to make sure that, how they're behaving around you is not affecting you?
For me, I just pray on them. I'm just like, Lord, take the...
Sometimes that's the only thing you can do.
Because college is a mess. But it has happened numerous of times, this instances. And that's why I had to take a break, because I feel myself like, I don't want to say starting to care too much, but it's like I'm getting too invested in their problems and their emotions. So basically, like, just take a step back. Just know, like you said, we're all human. You can't change the next person. We can influence them, but we really can't change them. We can give them something to think about and ponder on, but you never know how they gonna change those thoughts into something different.
Hey everybody, you know what time it is. It's time right now for our Pick the City Up art interlude, featuring an original piece by Branden Lewis called Will They Remember, off of Story Stitcher's latest album called The Why of My City.
A while ago, I went strolling with a friend down some back streets. I thought that he was happy till he stopped and he asked me, what is the why of my city? Immediately, I thought, what a weird way to phrase a question. Pretending I didn't know what he meant when he said it, he, unimpressed, sighs and repeats himself, what is the why of my city? If we were to jump forward 1,000 years, what would they say about my city if my city was no longer here? Would they remember Jackie Joyner, Chuck Berry, Red Fox, Maya Angelou, Dick Gregory, Miles Davis, Dred Scott? Would they remember how quickly bodies filled our cemeteries? Or remember that our city birthed legends because our city is legendary? Will they remember the struggle that kept my people in the slums, or that my people used that very struggle to overcome? My friend thinks I'm a therapist. He's depressed, and depression is more deceptive than appearances. Appearances can be deceiving, and friends can be needy, and friends can be greedy. My friend tends to meet me at the corner of broke and brokenness. He reminds me for a while what it's like to feel his hopelessness before taking a break from that to remind me of how alone he is and home he is, a soldier. But say lately he done had this helpless feeling, this nervous wreck, unprotected feeling. He can't even help it feeling helpless feeling. and I can't help but feel it. He says, I used to be stronger than I am now. I fought harder, ran longer. When I had to stand my ground, I always stood taller than I stand now. It's very rare that I stand now. Don't want to stand out. And as I looked at his hopeless face, I saw the willingness to stay in a broken place. I thought, what would Rosa say? She'd probably tell you to stand up, tell you to stand out, that sometimes the best way to stand up is to sit down. And would you listen? Or did you forget that we come from a long line of warriors? It is not pressure, but what we do with it that defines us. A cold, unmined is mindless. It's pressure that makes diamonds, and you are a diamond. So the next time you're stressed, or you're scared, or you're tired, and you're about to give up, remember the fight is for the fighters and for all of your talk of love for Maya. If you were the caged bird, would it still sing? Because we are at war with injustice, and we have no place for a dreamer who is too afraid to dream. They're not good for anything but the ones that are unafraid to dream. They're remembered as kings, and they're remembered as queens. Thank you.
What are some of the signs when you're dealing with somebody who's tremendously traumatized? What are some signs to what are signs to look for that their mental health is now negatively affecting your mental health? Like something that's different from you. Friends argue. You know what I'm saying? When you with somebody, it's just not all gonna be pleasant or whatnot. So like, how do you spot the difference between an unpleasant interaction and them actually negatively affecting your mental health?
How you feel, how it lands for you. If you find yourself always frustrated or bothered by what your friends are sharing with you, and it's hard for you to separate it from yourself, then that means something is happening in you because of their experience. And I think it is important to be able to have honest and open conversations with your friends and your family if you're experiencing that. Like, hey, when you talk about this, this is how it impacts me. I can't always be present for these conversations. And I believe that if it's true friendship and family and they respect and love you, they're able to understand it. It might be hard to hear because it's like, but you're the person that I vent to. You're the person that I talk to. And, you know, sometimes I know I've said it to people like, I understand that you want me to be that person. I can't be that person. Maybe looking for somebody that's unbiased, that they're not invested in that way, but they're invested in your healing, you can have that experience. So.
She said, how you feel. So I'm going to push back on you more than the other person, because I think in order to know how you feel, you have to know what your triggers are. Because, again, they're going to be acting out of their triggers, and you're going to be acting out of your triggers. So if you know what triggers you and that person is triggering you, then there needs to be a boundary there. Whether that's saying, I don't want to talk to you about this, or not talking to them at all. If it's a person that, you know, can't accept that boundary, that's okay too. Knowing what your boundaries are and what you will accept and what you will not accept from other people.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. I have a question. I'm taking a psychology class right now, and I know often my professor talks about like movie psychology, like what they portray in movies, and then like actual like psychology. And so in movies you have like a lot of like therapy sessions, and like what's the difference between like therapy sessions in the movies and like therapy sessions like actual? I mean, I know the difference, but for people who like watching movies and like they go to a therapist, they sit on this red leather couch and talk about their feelings for an hour and a half. So I just want to let them know like what's the difference between movie therapy and the actual therapy.
I don't have a couch.
Listen, all I got is a computer screen.
I think the movie therapy is hit or miss. Honestly, truly, I've seen some things where I'm like, that's not what you do. Like, that's not it. And then I've seen other things where I'm like, okay, that was true therapy. So it's hard to decipher, because I think, again, what we're seeing on TV and movies and in music and things may have some truth to them, but may also have some things that we need to throw out the window. Like, that's not it. don't know, but I ain't got no couch.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Alexis. Like, it is, some movies really connect with it and some of them don't. I think it's just more about the connection and the relationship with the therapist and the client. The only thing I can think of in like some of these TV shows is the therapists portray themselves as superhuman, and that's not real. Like, you can solve everything, you can fix everything, and that's not true. That is not, in my opinion, that is not the role of a therapist, to fix everything, to just swoop in. No, that's not who we are.
Yeah. I have one other comment to that based on something that you said. In terms of like fixing everything, we cannot fix a thing, okay? I'm not here to fix you. I just want to let you know that. But then also, we are here to guide you. And so for anyone that is concerned about seeking therapy and what that may look like and the stigma behind that, if your therapist is not guiding you to be true to who you are and what's important to you and telling you what you should be doing, that's not therapy. I don't know what you should be doing because I don't live your life on a daily basis. But I'm going to guide the conversation based on what you're telling me and using my evidence-based interventions. But this is your life. When you leave this 1 hour session, it's back on you to practice the skills that you decided are best for you. So, no, I can't fix nothing. I'm not fixing not a thing.
I like that. So, do y'all like okay, so for artists or whatever field you're in professionally, let's say in this example, music. Oh, no, if you're an engineer, when you're listening to music on the radio, you kind of hear it with a different type of ear. Because you do that, you know what I'm saying? That's your job. You do things like that. Do therapists like when you see somebody's like nervous tapping or something like that? Do y'all ever, and y'all gotta point out no names and that, you know, so I'm not saying y'all judgmental or nothing like that. But do y'all ever walk down the street and look at somebody like, oh, they need therapy?
I like to mind my business.
I mind the business that pays me.
You hear me? I see it, but that's not my business. Yeah. I think to answer that, I see things. I can have a conversation with someone in passing and kind of understand it a little bit more. Like, okay, I can see why you would think that way based off your perspective, but that's not my business.
For sure.
I feel that. That was such a clean.
It was smooth.
I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? She I feel you. I heard
clean
you.
Segue.
I heard you. You mind your business too?
I mind my business. I mean, because being a therapist, I think I've personally experienced when people hear me say, oh, you're a therapist. Oh, you're judging me right now. Oh, you're psychoanalyzing me right now. No, sir. You are not one of my clients. Mm-hmm. You are not on my caseload. So, like Alexis said, I mind the business that pays. I may observe things, but I'm observing them for the sake of observing. Like, I'm not trying to tell you or no. Mm-mm. Nope, not me. No, thank you.
Got you. All right, I hear you. So, generically speaking, do you think that fame combined with social media, is that a helpful or harmful to mental health? Like everybody wants to be or not everybody, but a lot of people, you know, seek fame. It's like some people call it the American dream or whatnot. You know, a lot of people just they only see one side of it. So, in your professional opinion, would you say that it's more helpful or more harmful to mental health?
I think it depends on your motives. Social media can be good for a lot of different things. If you have a business, it's good for entertainment. I know I get on there and laugh at a lot of stuff. And it can also be harmful. I mean, there were studies that showed, you know, how much we compare ourselves to other people's highlight reel. And so if you're able to use it in the proper way, I don't think that there's any problem with it. But we do understand that there are a lot of times, you know, finding that balance between using it properly and then also seeing what other people are doing and kind of comparing yourself to them.
Yes, I would definitely agree with Alexis. Social media fame, it has its positives and its negatives, but I think viewing your life in your own perspective and not measuring it by what you're seeing, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. it's just fake. I mean, but that's me. So, you know, just being mindful of that and, you know, understanding that even if fame is something that you're reaching for, understanding the steps to get to that, because I don't really know people that just wake up and they're famous unless they're the child of a celebrity. Then yeah, you do wake up and you're famous. But if that's not your story, it took steps to get there. So
yeah, what's your reality off of social media? Because it's cool to put your highlight reel, but are you happy off of social media?
Listen, that's all I'm saying. Are you really happy?
Do you like yourself?
Do you love yourself?
Forget about them likes. Do you like yourself?
Because what happened when they disappear?
Yeah.
Well, my dad is a counselor, and once I told him I wanted to become a music therapist, he was like, "Oh Lord, just remember that every therapist needs a therapist." Is that
yes.
true?
Yes.
I'm in therapy right now.
Me too.
Like, so does like your cases affect you, and that's why you need therapy? So it's like a cycle of like, no? Oh, so just you.
I need therapy.
Oh, okay.
It ain't got nothing to do with my clients.
I believe in therapy, and I just feel like for me, it helps me to stay balanced, and it helps me to continue to keep going and thriving. And if I'm gonna prescribe it or say, I believe this works, then I'm gonna work it for myself.
That makes sense. That's definitely true. I just find it hilarious every time he says that, and I'm like, "Where's your therapist?" like you do it all the time, but I don't see you.
I think therapy also it's not needed all of the time. So it depends on what you're going through. It's not to say you have to be in therapy 24/7, but if there are things that are impacting you, yeah, go grab you a therapist. Go talk about it.
So, can people, out of curiosity, can people that are like, let's say you were her therapist, could she also be your therapist, or is that like a conflict of interest?
Be each other therapist? No, I don't think so.
No,
word.
no.
Word. Is there like a rule against that or something like that?
Yes.
So it's called a dual relationship. We can't have dual relationships.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is it because of like biases? Like you're her friend?
Absolutely.
You don't want to be like,
I'm going to tell you what I think about your situation because of what I know.
You, I'll be like,
and it's not necessarily
no for me. Funny you say that because.
But we have to be unbiased, and so that's why we can't, do therapy with our family and our friends because we are biased in that way. I know your business, but when I am detached from you and I don't know what you do outside of therapy besides what you tell me, then I'm good. I'm giving you my unbiased feedback on what you're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. I know when I launched my practice, that was something that I noticed about launching my practice in Missouri, and I'm from Missouri. People like, oh, I want to work with you. And it's just like, no, you can't work with me, but I can refer you.
Right.
And please tell your family about me.
Yes. Tell them to come to see me, not you. Yeah.
How do you, I know you said that your clients don't typically affect you. How do you guys walk away from work feeling? I read in a book that you're taking and it was a fictional book, so this might not even be true. Y'all can fact check that too. But I read in a book that a therapist takes on the feelings of the client to show them to them, but that they're supposed to leave them like in the office or something like that. They're supposed to leave the feelings in the office. When they walk away from the session, they're supposed to remember those aren't your feelings, that's the client's feelings. So how do y'all feel leaving sessions? And is that true?
I've never heard of that.
See, man,
I'm not saying I don't know what.
I was just like,
So we are supposed to be empathetic. So there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. And again, my experience is more than likely it is different from the clients that I sit with. So I can't be sympathetic in the sense that I understand everything that you're going through, but I can empathize with you. And so there are times, that I empathize with someone and that can lead me to feel exhausted. But I think something that we know as therapists is we have to have our own practices to be able to deal with not only our own stuff, but to be able to help people deal with their own things. So, no, I'm sorry, I can't take on your stuff. I can't do that. But I can acknowledge where I may have had a similar experience, and I can, say I've been there. But when the therapy session is over, even if I had a similar experience, I don't have the choice to walk out the door and think about our similar situations. I have to guard myself in a way that when the next person walks in the door, I'm not thinking about that. So there's a consciousness that we have in terms of not taking on our clients' stuff, but then our practices outside of meeting with our clients, going to our own therapist and working through our own issues, having our own coping strategies, knowing our own triggers, having supportive systems, all of that. I can't take what you got going on. I got enough for me.
Right, most of I feel that.
Yes. It is staying in this therapy session. It is staying in this space. I will create the space for you, and that's where it stays. And I think everything that Alexis said is so true. And even having a tribe of therapists, friends that you can connect with on that level, just so that you have that additional support. But as far as like what happens in that session, like Alexa said, even if I have a similar experience, that's just what it is. That is just what it is. But if you find yourself as a therapist having a similar experience, and when your client is speaking, it impacts you in some way, that is when you know that you need to go and practice your coping skills or go talk to your therapist about what just happened. Maybe not in that moment, but that needs to happen because that transference is taking place. And so just being aware of that. And sometimes I think, you may experience it and you just keep on going and you don't realize that it's happening. But just being very aware, being very self-aware of where you are in those sessions, what's going on with you personally, can really be helpful.
Yeah, that was like my question. Like, what do y'all, what do y'all do if you catch yourself like feeling triggered by something someone said in your session? Because I know for me, I know most of my triggers already, and I'm like that friend people go to, like, hey, I'm feeling da-da-da, and I'm like, in the middle of it, I'm like, a flashback. So like, what do y'all do? Like, if it's like I understand like the coping mechanisms. Like what I do is just I'm like, hey y'all, I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Let me go home and like pray over myself. But like, what do y'all do if it's like in the moment and you're just like, what do I do next?
Yeah, be conscious of it, because you might get triggered. I think some people do have similar experiences, but in that moment when you are conscious, that's when you really need to be paying attention to what you're saying, because my trigger and how I respond to my trigger may be totally different from how my client is. And so again, that counter-transference, I don't want to be saying anything to them based on what I have experienced. So you definitely have to be conscious. I mean, I can't tell you no, we can't talk about that. But I have to, at some point, I have to be quiet and listen to you. And you guide what you want to do about that situation. I can't tell you, I had this similar situation and this is what I did. I'm a note. Okay, well, what do you want to do about it? How do you feel about that? Because I can't tell you how to feel about your situation.
Are therapy, is therapy and counseling, are they synonyms or is there a difference?
Good question.
I mean, I feel like people use them interchangeably. But there is a difference between a counselor and a school counselor. So that is, and therapists, like therapist, counselor, I use them interchangeably, but school counselor, no.
Yeah.
I didn't study that part.
Yeah, me neither. I think, so therapist is the broader term, but there may be a difference in your like credentialing. So we are licensed professional counselors that also call ourselves therapists, but then there are also social workers who also call themselves therapists. So we got a different degree, but we typically do the same things in terms of like talk therapy.
Gotcha. And so therapy is like the umbrella term. And then it's all these different. Got you. Okay, dope. So what's the difference between what you do and what a school counselor does?
Well, I know a lot of school counselors, and so typically school counselors, If it is more so not mental health school counselors, then they work with young people on like grades and school schedules, testing and things like that. Now then there are school therapists that do the mental health component, but typically school counselors, they may do some small groups, but a lot of times they're helping with the day-to-day function for the students and like preparing them for after, but not necessarily dealing with the mental health concerns.
Gotcha.
Yeah, my school counselor, shout out Miss Johnson, but she like I said, she helped me with the mental health aspect of it at all. I mean, some of it, you can tell it wasn't by the book at all. You can't do certain things. But yeah, she was just like in between. I mean, she had credentials in like both mental health and like school counseling. So there were some facts that I was like, okay, I have to listen to that. And then some of it's like, you bring in the hood in the school, and I can't I can't do that at the school I'm at. Yeah.
That's the beauty of having a black therapist.
Yes.
Yeah, she was like somebody when she didn't have no kids, but she was every black like woman like mom, and I love her for it.
Dope. That's dope.
Representation is like key.
What's the first thing they teach you when y'all went to school? What was the first, or at least the first big thing that stuck out to you?
I'd say two things. My first class was orientation, so there's a lot of different things that we can do with our degree. We can be teachers, we can be school counselors, we can be mental health counselors, and so that was important to know, like, what do you want to do with this degree? And then secondly, I don't remember what class it was, but all throughout the program, we learned about self-awareness. And I feel like that is the biggest thing, because before you can like teach someone else to be self-aware, you yourself have to be self-aware. So that was gold. I was like, okay, I was not self-aware until my graduate program.
I wish we could talk more. We're running out of time. I wish we can keep going. This is just so much that people need to know about mental health and whatnot. But definitely, yeah. Yo, I was saying that before we even... It's probably gonna happen. You're right. So before we close out, is there anything that either of you would like to say to the public? Anything that they should know, that they should be more aware of? Any tips? Anything?
The only thing I would say is just to acknowledge we are still in a global pandemic. I don't care what nobody says. Okay. On top of everything else that we have going on, and so just being able to take care of yourself.
Alexis said it. Take care of yourself. Love on yourself. As much as you want to love on others, pour that into you as well. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. So just love on yourself, whatever that looks like for you. Hopefully it's something positive and healthy. But just love on yourself. Take care of you. Take care of all aspects of you.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to StitchCast Studio. If you're in between the ages of 16 and 24 and want to know how you can join our next podcast or how you can be a part of our Story Stitches family, you can find that information on storystitches.org. If you just want to know what we have coming up next, we got a bunch of fun stuff coming, we got a lot of everything coming. So if you want to know about those things, you can also check us out at storystitches.org. If you like our podcast, you can like us on Podbean. You can also find our podcast anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Make sure y'all follow us on Instagram at Story Stitches. And that's everything I got for y'all. Thank y'all so much for listening. Peace, and we out.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, yo.
Thank you for listening. And last but not least, we want to give a very special shout out to the StitchCast Studio sponsors. StitchCast Studio Season 2 in 2021 is sponsored by the Spirit of St. Louis Women's Fund 3-year grant from 2020 to 2022. Arts and Education Council PNC grant and Lush Corporation's The Charity Pot. Peace in the Prairie is presented with support from Missouri Arts Council, a state agency which receives support from the state of Missouri and the National Endowment for Arts. Additional support is provided by the Spirit of St. Louis Women's Fund, Missouri Foundation for Health, City of St. Louis Youth at Risk Crime Prevention Grant of 2020, Stewart Family Foundation, and Kranzberg Arts Foundation.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches.